Welcome to Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Being a fireman, father, veteran, husband, world record holder, and Ironman, he brings stories of experience to impact your life while challenging you to live it. What do you want from your life? Why do you want it? Are you willing to go through the challenges to get there? If you have the courage to take that first step, let this podcast be the catalyst to start your fire, while you bring the resilience to make it continue to burn. Our lives are made up of moments called right nows. So let's get started. Forged in the Fires podcast with your host, Fireman Rob, begins now.
All right, welcome back to Forged in the Fires podcast. I'm your host, Fireman Rob. Today's guest, his experience list is longer than most grocery lists. He's a thought leader, an entrepreneur, a speaker, a veteran. Randall Crowder, great to have you on the show today.
Rob, no, I appreciate it. I'm humbled. You're killing it, and we have a common friend, and this is how we kind of came to meet. And when he tells me, "Look, you're going to love this person," it's like I'm automatically like, "Oh yeah, I know I'm going to love this person." But then you meet somebody like, "All right, I love your energy. I want to vibe with you." And so, I'm excited to talk to you, and really, congratulations on all the success with the show and what you're doing.
It.
I commend, anyone putting themselves out there, but also with the intent of helping other people learn, experientially and through the experiences of others. So, it means a lot. I don't think people realize how hard it is, putting all this stuff together. It's like, oh yeah, you just roll out of bed and talk to people, right? Like, no, this is a hard thing to curate and put together. So thank you for having me on.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, and it's great to have guests like you that you go into your backstory. I mean, people have to go to your site, randallcrowder.com, and then you've got so many different businesses. I want to go back to I love the family aspect where you say son, brother, and puppy. Spoiler. What kind of puppy do you have?
A Greater Swiss Mountain Dog.
Oh my gosh, that's not a puppy,
awesome.
Is it?
Not a puppy anymore. She's about 120 pounds, but she still thinks she's a lap dog.
That's a small child.
Yes, it is. She's bigger than my wife.
Oh my God, that's great. And the biggest thing is, family, obviously, yeah. And that helps to bring you to where you want to go. You went to the United States, to West Point. How did you make that decision? I know in 1998 you made that decision, but how did it come about to say, hey, I want to do this for my country?
Yeah, I see now, Rob, you're gonna make me feel bad about myself because you're already making me sound better than I am. So I will.
No, you're way better than this.
I will be nothing but honest, and I will say I was maybe a late bloomer. So I think it's funny. So in '98, you're exactly right. I'm old now. We just got a notice from our So whenever you whenever you go to West Point, the first summer is called Beast Barracks, and it's this idea of a prolonged boot camp to kind of break you down and remold you in, the eyes of whatever the Army wants you to believe you can be. And I just realized that the new class, which I guess will graduate in 2026, just finished their Beast Barracks. And my roommate from West Point texted me and he goes, "You realize these kids weren't even born when we did this?" And I was like, "Oh, thanks for ruining my day. I'm old, and it's my birthday on Thursday, and now I'm pissed off."
Did you just take some ibuprofen? And
yeah, right. My knees start getting a little achy, and I'm like, "Oh God!" Back in my day. So, anyways, back in '98, which most kids, weren't in existence. They don't know what '98 was like. We were peacetime, and Rumsfeld was downsized in the Army. And one of my friends in high school said, like, "Hey, I'm going to go to West Point. My dad, went to West Point. My family's kind of always been supporters of West Point. You should come with me." And I'm like, "Well, you got to be in the military, right?" And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "No, thanks. I'm going to UT, and I'm having a great time partying in high school. I'm going to have an even better time partying in college. I'm already accepted to UT. No, thank you." And then I did. Oh, this has been so annoying. I do this. I've done it ever since. This is probably the first time that I can remember, though, in my adult life and I think everybody faces this if they're honest about it. It was that soul-searching moment. Yeah. A lot of people don't realize this about me, but I'm a runner, and I think running is a great proxy for life because you don't have to do it. You can only do it by yourself, and you can quit anytime. And so when you decide to do it, and you finish, there's something magical about that moment of deciding to do it, whether it's rainy, whether you're sore, whether you have to do it or not. And I had that first moment, recollection back in probably, this was 96 at the time. And it was like, he asked me if I could do it, if I would do it. And my natural instinct is, no, I don't want to do it. But why am I saying no? Do I think I can't do it? I was like, well, the only reason that I would not be able to do it is, my inability. So, well, I don't want to admit that I can't do something. And so, you know what? Here's the thing. I'm going to apply. And I kind of thought in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'm probably not going to get in. So what an easy fix. Like, I tried. I didn't get in. I'm going to go party at UT. Yeah. So then all of a sudden I get in. And I'm like, damn it. All right, well,
now I got to figure this out.
My second soul-searching moment here where I'm like, well, shit, I've got to figure out if I really want to do this. And I'm like, I can't admit I can't do it. And so I end up going. And I'm still not brave or a patriot in this moment. I'm still just, thinking like, well, all right, it's a good education. It's still reasonably prestigious. And, I was not wealthy. My parents weren't wealthy. I was like, this will be a way for me to not have my parents help out with college. They can use the money they saved on themselves, a little bit of giving back. I was starting to mature just a little bit. And then, he tells me, and this was the clincher. He's like, look, I've been talking to people who've been going to West Point. Rumsfeld's downsizing the military. People are getting paid $80,000 to $100,000 just not to serve, like just to get out. Like, your commission is normally 5 years after graduation to pay back. People are getting out in like 18 months, 24 months. So I was like, okay, now we're talking. This is interesting. So we go, and then lo and behold, everybody kind of knows, what happened in September of 2001. That was my senior year. And I still remember walking into class, the very first class I had after 9/11. Everybody shook. Everybody's talking about it. And this guy is like ripped right out of a cartoon, like just massive square jaw, like gravelly voice, and like this old colonel. I think he had jumped in a Grenada or something. And he looks at us, that hard stare, looking around the room, and we're all like freaked out about what just happened. And they had still actually warned that West Point was also a target. And so we had done a couple drills. Everybody's, adrenaline's pumping. And he goes, well, cadets, you're all going to war. I was like, oh my God, wow. Seriously? And so, that's when it kind of gets real. And, we can get into it later, but it was like, you grow up in that moment. And, I spent most of my active service, deployed. And I think in those moments that, you realize, life will move on you sometimes, and you just have to, nobody is inherently extraordinary or exceptional. You just persevere. Life will throw a lot of things at you, and it's what you do in those moments that will define you. And I think I've, just set about trying to be the best version of me in every situation. And I'm fortunate to have come home, safe and sound every time. I think I'm fortunate, at least in my mind, to not suffer from, PTSD, given the things that we did and saw. But a lot of people weren't so lucky. And I think we got to remember, people, small plug for kind of mental health and just being cognizant of our fellow man and woman, and understanding that, just because you might have persevered, somebody else might not have, or for different reasons, might be suffering. And so, I'm blessed for the experiences I've had. I think it taught me a lot. I think it humbled me a lot. But I'm always in awe at some of the people who have overcome even harder things since they've been back.
I love the honesty. It's such a hard thing to see. A lot of people kind of gloss over and then go to the successful parts. You have 2 Bronze Stars. You have an airborne tab, or a Ranger tab, I should say, an airborne qualified. So those aren't small things. And it looks like you jumped over 8 people. Is that right?
It was, I think that people in general, it's one of those things where it's like, you're here, I want to get the most out of it, and I want to challenge myself. And I think that there's something almost, and it's not spiritual, but it's existential. It can be spiritual, yes. But it is that when you and a lot of it is failure, right? Like, you hit the nail on the head. I kind of always tune out when people start talking about all their accolades and success, because it, exactly. I know it. It's like it's only half the story, and maybe only 25% of the story. It's our failures are. I have messed up so many things, and I have been through the craziest situations, and those kind of scars, that builds, muscle. That builds, not only that, but it also helps you understand how far you can go, whether it's selection, whether it's running, whether it's overcoming adversity. Once you've done it, you have a new comparison other, and that comparison other helps you deal with the next time something happens. You're like, you know what, I can get through this. And I think that's important. So I always tell people, you need to get to pushing your boundaries, because until you've pushed your boundaries, you don't know how far you can go. Right. And then even when you push them too far, that's okay, because you'll learn something from it and you might be better prepared next time. And so I've just been always trying to do that. Everywhere I go, I kind of look around and say, okay, like, what would challenge me in this moment? And let's go do that. And, let's see what happens.
It was interesting because you said like the scars, and a lot of times people wear those long sleeve shirts to not show the scars of what brought them to be the leaders. And that's why I was so amazing that you were transparent in what you're saying, because to see your success, you're still showing your scars. And a lot of people fear that those scars people won't see them as successful as they are. Mm-hmm. What gives you that power to be able to do that?
It's actually, there's some interesting psychological principles in a lot of this. And I think that people really need to understand that some of the things that people scream at the top of their lungs is not actually, how people think. You look around in today's society. Negative content gets 6x the engagement of positive content. And so when you have paid for media, that's what they're going to push. And so you watch the news, you just think the world's on fire. Everyone hates each other. It's red states versus blue states. And then you put 100 people, strangers in a stadium or a room, or, thousands of people in a stadium, 100 people in a room. And you realize, like, I'd have a beer with 95% of you. And you're actually all not that bad. And you realize, oh, maybe that's just, the ones on the far right and the far left, they're just the noisiest. And so I think that there's this interesting psychological principle, getting back to the point, where being vulnerable breeds authenticity, and authenticity will build stronger relationships. And so, being able to put yourself out there and say, here's me. People can sense, the vulnerability anyways. Like, you're not going to be able to cover it up. I always tell people, anytime you're trying to be slick or be shady, humans sense authenticity like dogs sense fear. And you're just better off just shining a light on it. I'm like, man, I'm this, I'm that. And, I hope you love me, but if you can help me, tell me how I can be better. And that's where I think people go wrong, is they're always trying to reframe their own narrative. And they're always trying to, soften the hard edges and look over here, not over here. And, I think you just got to give it to them straight, no chaser.
Yeah, no, and this leads perfectly into your favorite superhero, Batman. I love how you talk about it. Like, he's a flawed hero, and he uses his intellect and resources. Tell me more about, because I want to Randall Batman.
Yeah, I'm gonna do something I usually tell. So, if you ever, read, you've already read it, but there's a book called 0 to 1 from Peter Thiel. And he talks a lot about, the idea of a non-consensus thought. When he interviews people, he says, what is your one non-consensus thought? And the non-consensus thought is this idea of what is something that the rest of the world believes that you disagree with. And he just really wants to see what you think about, how you think about critical thinking. I unfortunately have a lot of non-consensus thoughts, which probably says something about me.
Yeah. I can't tell at all.
And so I tell people all the time, do not talk about, religion, politics, or sex. And I will talk about any of those at any time with anyone, because, I don't care. So, where I will go with the Batman point and why I love it is something that I like to pose sometimes confrontational arguments or thoughts just to get people thinking. I went to a Catholic private school, my whole life. I just got married in New York in an Orthodox wedding. So, I am spiritual. But I used to do this to the nuns all the time. And I was always like, is it more impressive that Jesus is the Son of God? Oh, I love that. Well, small pause, because now I'm excited. You can't mute it. What kind of dogs do you have?
I've got a big dog that's a rescue.
Oh, we talked about it the other day. So my other non-consistent thought is, if I meet someone who doesn't like dogs, who isn't allergic or hasn't been attacked, I know I will most likely not get along with them. I judge people by how they interact with dogs. And I'll admit it, and I do it all the time, and I can't help it. I'm not going to stop. But if I see like a dog run up to you, and how you interact with it in that first 10 seconds will tell me everything I need to know about you. Anyways, so going back to this point,
he had a question for you. That was all it was.
I love it. You see what? You know what? He is welcome. I love dogs. They're my heart and soul. So back to this kind of concept of Batman. I love him because he's kind of this. He's flawed, not always PC. Doesn't have any superpowers. And, now granted, a lot of people will say, yeah, being rich is a pretty, nice superpower, and they're not wrong.
Right.
So I always flip it and I say, well, let's talk about Jesus. Let's get real uncomfortable. And I used to always tell the nuns back in school this, and I would just pose it. I would say, what if Jesus was just a normal man? Would it be more impressive what he's done for the world as a normal man, or as being a superhuman deity that is the Son of God? Like, if he's a superhuman deity and the Son of God, it's like a foregone conclusion. Like, I'm not going to give you as much credit. But what if he was just a man? What if he inspired so much? And again, it could be any religion. It's not just Christianity. Yeah. There's individuals or people that have now been propped up as deities in every single religion, and the impact they've had on people's lives is incredible. And I like to kind of noodle on the idea of, what if they were just human? And if they were just human, what are you capable of? And I think people really underestimate the power that a human can have, not only over themselves and their kind of little sphere of influence, but how they can have that over the world and what impact they can have. And I don't like to just say, well, only superheroes can do that. Only people with divine power can do that. No, anyone can do it. And that's what gets me jacked up. I love thinking about that.
I love that concept, because it's so true. I have a foundation where we use an acronym. We deliver bears to children's hospitals, and we have an acronym called SMILE. It's simple moments impact lives every day. And it's exactly like what you're talking about, because everybody has this amazing gift. And I love that, this leads perfectly into all of your, the Texas Venture Labs, going into the Central Texas Angel Network, all of these things, the venture capital that you're creating. You're part of something that's creating other people's dreams and giving them opportunities. Tell me how you went from, serving in the military, and then you obviously went to Texas. You had to go there because that was destined.
Yep.
You didn't want to miss that opportunity, right?
No way.
But how did you get into all of these? I mean, like I said before, 24 experiences, and I could list them all off, but how did it drive you to go from one to the other and seeing those helping others to succeed?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I'll try to kind of infuse a couple just pieces of advice I think anybody can take and run with. When I was in the military, I was all in, and I've always thought about that. When I got out, a lot of my kind of superior officers at the time were really surprised. A lot of times you can tell when someone's going to get out. I'm sure you've seen that, where it's kind of like, you have a little bit of a loss of motivation. You're always looking to kind of, do something else. I was not, I kind of view it, if I'm going to put my name on something, I'm going to do something, I'm all in until I'm not, and then I'm all out. And so it was a surprise to a lot of people that I was getting out of the military. They kind of thought I was going to be a lifer. And, when I got out, I kind of felt like, I did everything I could in the military that I wanted to do. I wanted another challenge. I started to get the sense that eventually I wasn't going to be able to kick down doors. I was going to have to ride a desk anyways. And so I didn't want to ride a desk in the military. I didn't want to send other people out to do the things that I was doing. And so I was like, well, I'll write a desk, in the private sector and seek out a new challenge. And so I always think that, the military, all of the armed forces will teach you either really love command and control, you really love having a boss, or you really don't like it. And I think only probably, it's probably the 80 or 20 rule. I think 20% don't like it. I was in that 20%. And so I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be my own boss. I didn't want to be told what to do or where to go or where to be. And the problem was I had no idea what I wanted to do. I wasn't passionate about anything. I think a lot of entrepreneurs face that, where they're like, hey, I really want to do something. I want to run a business, but I don't have any good ideas right now to commercialize. And so I was going to get my MBA at UT anyways. I was already accepted to McCombs. This was kind of 2008, January timeframe. And everyone's like, man, you got eight months off till school starts. You going to go party? What are you going to do? And fortunately, by this point, I had grown up from my high school self. And I was like, no way. I'm not going to party. I'm getting to work. Because I felt like I was behind the power curve. I felt like, all right, what translatable skills do I have? I can do movement to contact, but my friends that, didn't go to the military, they're doing $1 billion deals on Wall Street. Shit, I need to catch up. And so I made a list of 100 people I wanted to meet, and I set about trying to meet them. I was like, I'm going to spend the next 8 months networking my face off. And so 50 of them blew me off. It's just the way it goes. People need to get people need to get comfortable being told no. I think everybody should have a paper route, a candy route, do something, sell door to door, learn how to, have a pitch, be told no, refine your pitch, keep going, and keep having a smile and have that passion every single time you sell. That is an important competitive advantage for human beings. So I said, all right, 50 blew me off, 20 kind of kick the can down the curb, and then 30, engage with me. And I set about meeting them, and I didn't ask them for anything. It's what you do so well. Key. It's I just want to hear your story. I want to learn about you. I want you to tell me the things maybe you don't tell everybody else, and really be an active listener and get in their heads. And I was like, look, I'm going to school in 8 months. I don't need a job. I don't need anything. I just really want to meet you. And those were great conversations. One of them led to Admiral Bobby Inman, ex-director of the deputy director of the CIA, director of naval intelligence, worked under Clinton a lot. Early investor in Dell and Oracle, and then became a venture capitalist. And so I thought, well, hey, this is kind of interesting. I don't know what idea I want to have as an entrepreneur, but you see entrepreneurs all day long as an investor. Can I be a fly on the wall and see? It's almost like know your enemy, right? I was like, if I'm going to be a good entrepreneur, I want to learn the other side of the fence. And so I really kind of fell in love with this idea of investing. I led with value. I've always believed you should lead with value. So I kind of thought, all right, if I don't know if I have translatable skills, let me just try to add value wherever I can. And I noticed in their pitches when these entrepreneurs would come in, and this is just the summer before, I started McCombs, summer of 2008. And I noticed that these entrepreneurs were coming in, and if anybody's ever pitched a VC, you kind of know this. They don't really take notes. They just, they're half the time they're on their phone. They're not really, you don't even know if they're paying attention to you. You don't know if they like you. They're yelling at somebody down the hallway. You're like, shit, is this going well or not? I don't know. And so after one or two of these, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do something to add value here. And so I started taking these crazy copious. Nobody told me to do it. Nobody asked. I didn't tell them I was doing it. But I started creating these briefing books of everything about the company, pulling together information from the entrepreneurs. I did it probably 10 or 15 times. I was Googling stuff how to evaluate a company. And then I created all these reports, and then I brought it to them. And I was like, hey, I just wanted you to know that I appreciate you letting me kind of see how the inner workings of your firm go on. Here's my contribution. And they were like, holy shit, what is this? And I was like, these are all the notes from the companies that have come through. And they're like, Jesus. And so that opened the doors to a lot more opportunities with them. And I started doing some deal sourcing through the angel community, which is kind of the farm team for VCs. And I met a gentleman named Jamie Rhodes who had just started the Central Texas Angel Network. And I found out, I was like, hey, I'm going to do the exact same thing there. Can I be a fly on the wall and more of the same? Angels function just like VCs. Nobody's really paying attention. It's like herding cats. And then they were looking for an executive director. And I said, hey, who are you looking at, to be an executive director? And they said, well, and they went through this list of qualifications. And I said, well, you just described Elon Musk. And I hate to break it to you, Elon Musk is not going to run your angel network. Like, this is glorified secretary work. And I was like, I tell you what, I'm going, I got an idea for you. So I ended up, and this is an important thing that Tony Robbins always talks about. He's like, when you're in state, do something that forces you to be accountable to wherever you're headed. And so in that moment, I said, look, I want a meeting with the board at the end of the summer. And so this was like, late June, early July. So I had like 4 weeks. And so what I went back and I said, all right, here's all the problems I've identified with this angel network. I think it's unorganized as shit. Nothing's, there's no expectation management. The entrepreneurs don't know what's going on. The investors don't know what's going on. So you'll know this. And a lot of people listening that served in the military will know what a standard operating procedure is. So I built an SOP for running an angel network. And it was like over 100 pages. It was everything about due diligence, everything about deal review, everything about process, everything about expectations, how to apply, all this stuff. And nobody knew I was doing it. I didn't tell anybody I was doing it. And guess what? Google's a great resource. I was ripping things off the internet left and right. And I put together a standard operating procedure of how to run a network that is, I think, still being, passed around today to different angel networks. And I went up to the board and I said, you're looking for the wrong person to be an executive director. I'll do it. I'm going to grad school. You need someone with a military background. You need someone who understands operational excellence and organizational discipline, and I'll do it for free. And here's what I'm going to do. And I slammed the SOP book down on the table. And they were like, again, holy shit, what is this? And they're like, you did this for free? And so, my dad always told me you never get what you don't ask for. And I asked for it and they gave it to me. And so in the next, 3 years, I grew that to be the most active angel network in the country. It's still one of the most active angel networks in the country. And that kind of led me to venture capital, which, me and two partners started Texo Ventures, which was a healthcare focused venture fund. I spent a decade investing only in tech enabled healthcare. I started an accelerator at McCombs called Texas Venture Labs. This was that idea of expenditure. I was getting all this experience in the real world. I wanted other people to have it. I got called out when we were graduating. So I gotta get the video for this. But when I'd gotten this award whenever that 4 people got whenever we graduated. And then when I was walking up to get my diploma, the dean of McCombs literally called me out in the middle of the auditorium and said, I don't know if you really should be getting a degree from McCombs because you didn't really spend much time here. Because I got them to give me course credit for all the work I was doing, everything. I got course credit for running CTAN. I got course credit for starting Texas Venture Labs. I got course credit for starting Texo Ventures, and I had 3 other hustles that I was working on. So I didn't like any of the curriculum that they had. I didn't want to learn about what Coke is doing with $100 billion marketing budget. I wanted to go do stuff in the real world. So I always wanted to give that same experience back to others because it was so beneficial to me. And so I started Texas Venture Labs with the idea to do that. Now it's called John Brumley Texas Venture Labs. And then I did a Kauffman Fellowship in Silicon Valley, which is this idea of kind of, getting people together who are going to be the next generation of great VCs. And then I'll shut up here in a second. The long story short, which is how life works.
Please don't.
It's like serendipity. And I tell people this all the time. You want to be the best version of yourself for yourself. But there's also a very selfish reason behind doing it. You never know who's looking, and you never know what's going to happen in your future. So in 2009, when I was in my second year, almost not even at my second year, almost to my second year for my MBA, I'd just begun running the Central Texas Angel Network. I had somebody kind of write to me and say, hey, there's a guy coming into town. He's a successful entrepreneur. He's kind of thinking about hanging it up and becoming an investor. Will you help kind of network him around town? I was like, yeah, sure. And I've been doing this for a while now, almost a little over a year. And so pattern recognition begins to set in. And I remember talking to him for the very first time. And he's like, yeah, I want to, mentor the next generation. And I was like, listen, I don't think you're going to be an investor. I can spot someone who really wants to build companies, and you're one of them. And I guarantee you're going to want to start something else. He's like, no. I'm going to hang out with the kids and hang it up for right now. And 6 weeks later, he's like, hey, can I meet with you? I'm like, yeah, sure. He's like, I got an idea for a company. I'm like, I told you. And I knew that it would require a special company for me to kind of give up the VC gig and kind of go all in on one thing. But that was, 5 years ago, and I've never looked back. And, I said yes quick, never looked back. And now I really enjoy this chapter of my life where it's kind of one team, one fight, all in on Funware and what we're doing, because it really is transformational.
That's crazy. Like, you really have had a nice journey through life of figuring out the fruitfulness of life. You know what I mean? It's pretty amazing. And to be at the place that you're at now, kind of back in that team setting, what does it mean to be able to bring more people into that fold for you, to be able to take all of your knowledge and bring them into that fold, to be able to have them not have to go through all the steps to get to that point?
Yeah, it's probably what, so I just got married about 2 weeks ago, and we found out a week before the wedding that we were expecting our first child.
Oh, congratulations.
So I know that we were talking about, a trip that you just took with, your kid to the EAA. And it's like, I'm sure you struggle with this as a parent. Like, I want to teach you everything that I know, but I also don't want to take away from you. Yeah. I want you to be able to, fail and learn from it, because I failed and learned from it. So you can't, coddle your kids. You can't coddle your employees. You can't coddle your friends or your relationships. So it's a tough balance. What I try to instill is confidence and esteem, because I think if you have that, you can weather any storm, and it's not, cockiness or brashness. It's just this fundamental understanding that I can do this, and I now as in my role, I always want to make sure I resource people properly, I set people up for success, and I train them properly. But I think that there's a couple things as I think about where I'm at now. One, and this is not exactly the answer, but I want to talk about this first, is a challenge I think anyone's going to face when you begin to scale and you lead people. And this is something that I have not figured out yet. And everybody else figures out how to figure this out, let me know, but I'm working on it. And it's something that Admiral Inman told me a long time ago. He said, one of the hardest things for type A personalities, which almost all entrepreneurs are, is figuring out that even if you can get an A doing a task and somebody else maybe can only get a B minus, it may actually be worth letting them get the B minus so that you have time to focus on something else where you can get an A plus, and that has more gravity for the overall endeavor. I was like, oh man, you blew my fucking mind. Like, are you serious?
Had to put it that way.
Exactly. Because it's like, if I know I can do something, I don't want to let somebody else do it worse. And it's like, you watch people, not be able to loosen their grip, and you can't scale that way. You gotta let people help you. You gotta let people do things maybe differently than you would do it. And you gotta understand, commander's intent. What is your vision? Where are you headed? But you got to be okay. And sometimes they're even going to fail at stuff you could have done. You'd be like, I would have done it this way, and I knew how to do this, and you failed at it. And, you don't want to necessarily come down too hard on them, because it's like, then they're not going to try the next time. Now you just got, drones instead of people who are really adding value. So I think that's, when you think about, simple acts of kindness, sometimes that is just supporting people and giving them, room to learn and fail, and not making that's something that my dad taught me very often. Again, a huge mistake of mine that I don't think I've ever said this on a podcast, so you might be the first. Oh shit, I'll say it. I don't care. So I was remember Party Randall when I was in high school? Party Randall Party Randall hated staying over at other people's houses. And even if Party Randall was drinking, he would get it in his mind that he needed to go home. And on more than one occasion, don't ever drive drunk. It is the stupidest thing you could possibly do. You're not only putting yourself at risk, you're putting others at risk. And you don't want to live with that kind of guilt of not just hurting yourself, but what if you hurt somebody else who didn't do anything wrong? So fortunately, I never had that happen to me. But my dad always told me, he said, listen, if you ever need me, I will be there for you. And if you need me in a situation where you're embarrassed to call me and you still call me, we'll never talk about it again. I will help you and we will never discuss it again. I always thought that was odd. And he said it to me like my freshman year. I was like, all right, whatever. And probably my senior year of high school, I was leaving a friend's house and I was like, I didn't think I was that drunk. And then I was driving, and it was going to be super easy to get home, so I wasn't going that far. And then I was lost like 20 minutes after I should have been home. And I'm like, man, I should not be driving. So again, I'm old, right? So this was before cell phones. And so I actually pull myself over. I pull over in this HEB. It's a grocery store down here in Texas. I pull over in this parking lot. There's no one there. And I'm going to go to a payphone, and I'm going to call my dad. Actually, I was going to call my friend. I'm not being honest. I was going to call my friend. I wasn't prepared to call my dad yet. So I was going to call my friend, tell him to come pick me up, or somebody to help me out. So as I'm walking down the parking lot up to this grocery store, I look up and I see a cop just standing there. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And so in my mind, I'm like, I got to play this cool. And so I walk up to the cop and I'm like, excuse me, sir, do you know if there's payphones on the property? Well, kind of like if you've seen Wolf of Wall Street and the way he imagines things versus what actually happened. I'm pretty sure I like crawled up to him and was like, he doesn't even respond to me. He turns me around, slaps handcuffs on me, and sits me down. And this is this is like May. I'm reporting to West Point in like a month and a half. And I'm like, my bullshit goes into overdrive. I'm like, officer, I'm so sorry. I was trying to do the right thing. I was pulling over, and I don't even know what I said at that point. Every ounce of me that has been able to influence friends, sell people, do anything came out in just a torrent of excuses. And let's try to fix this problem. So long story short, he ends up calling my dad. Dad comes and picks me up. I found out much later that the cop was like, you got a good boy here. He was at least trying to do the right thing. Should have never been in that situation. But, my dad picked me up, took me home, never said a word.
Wow.
Never said a word. We've laughed about it since, but, didn't scold me. We went to West Point the next month and, went on. And so I always thought about that as a parent, like how hard it must have been. But then he kind of made a commitment to me, and I honored that commitment. He honored his commitment. And I was like, God, like that. It's just, there's so many lessons in that I want to learn as a parent and as a boss and as a coworker. And that, what happens when someone in your sphere of influence fails, and what do you do to help the situation and help them grow? And so I've always kind of kept that with me and try to, figure out how to set people up for success, but kind of create a safe space to learn and fail.
That's a hard thing. I have 3 kids, so it's one of those hard things where a lot of times it looks from the outside like you know what you're doing, and then and inside it's like a storm that has no end.
I'm sure it's always going to be like that for you, right? I'm sure you're always just you're never not thinking about your kids and what you're doing and what they're doing, and I think that's exciting, right? It's like I would butcher the quote if I tried to say it, but it's something about if you're not doing something, did you really even live? Like if you're not failing, if you're not pushing yourself, you lived a life that was so inconsequential, did you even really live? And I think, that's, what I try to remember, that it's not about the pursuit of happiness. It's about the happiness of pursuit. And it really is that kind of just, I said this to somebody else maybe last week, begin to romanticize the small moments, get really excited about having breakfast with your kids, get really excited about listening to a podcast, listen to, Forged in Fire on your way to work, get excited about the little moments, and then, stop just waiting for that big moment. I'll be happy when I go on vacation in 5 months. Well, shit, does that mean you're going to be miserable for 5 months? Like that sucks. And so I've really tried to embrace that chaos and embrace that process and embrace that journey and really try to think about that in ways that are more productive to my overall psyche. But who knows? Maybe a psychiatrist would tell me I'm being delusional.
Well, I think it's interesting because there's so many people that are scared of the unknown, that are scared of things that they've never done, and so they go down that path of comfort. Yeah, and you look at your path and there's nothing comfortable. I mean, half the shit I can't even understand what the heck it is. Leveraging blockchains and all this other stuff. It's like, I'm getting a headache just looking at it.
Look, I've still got a headache, and I'll tell you what, I made mistakes the entire way through, and it is.
But you weren't scared, were you?
I think I was more scared of not doing it. I think there's again, I'm gonna butcher it, but it's quoted by somebody much smarter than me, but it's like, there are only, two pains in this world. There's the pain of discipline and the pain of regret. So you have to pick. And I think that's always resonated with me where, I can either have the discipline to see things through, to try things, to do things, or I can have the pain of regret and wondering, I wonder what could have been, or what if, or man, I could have done that. Of course I could have. And I've seen that in people where, they're always making excuses for why they didn't do something. And I can tell in their heart, they're a little bit, they regret it. And so, I think that's something that people should always think about when they take that kind of, easy or wrong over the harder right. And what's wrong for you, what's right for you. You have this internal compass in you that is almost always right. And when you feel that anxiety and that nervousness, that's probably the thing you should do. I got another stupid story that I've actually, I don't know what's up with you, Rob, but I keep telling you stories that I don't think I've ever told anybody else. I
love it.
Also a failure when, my other soul searching moments. I've just started taking over. I think I didn't even get the job yet. This was August of 2008. So I'm trying to weasel my way into this angel network and convince them that I can do it. I'm just about to start business school. And they have this like pitch party. And so I find out that like I want to be in this group called Venture Fellows, which is this kind of, at McCombs, this kind of venture capital, special group that everybody tries to get into, and they only select like 15 people. And I'm like, well, I need to go where they are, and because they're going to be on the interview board and they're all at this party, so I'm going to go. And the whole construct, it's sponsored by Microsoft, and it's like they give you fake money. And they tell you got to pitch an idea, and all the investors are the other kids and venture fellows and professors and industry, actually people from the industry. And so I'm like, all right, yeah, I'll do this. And so like I'm gonna embrace the university mindset. And mind you, at this time, I still don't fancy myself a salesperson, but I'll do it if I have to. And so I go
find
in.
That to be crap.
I appreciate that. But you know what? It's like over the lifetime of doing this, I'm like, I'll do what needs to be done. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. So I walk into this room all confident and like I freeze. I'm like, there's like 500 people in this room. It's chaos. I'm like, I'm out of here. I turn right back around and I literally leave this building. It's this alumni building down on UT campus. I walk about quarter of a mile back to the parking garage. I'm sitting in my car. And I'm like, damn it. God, don't be a fucking quitter. And so I'm like, all right, screw this. And so I storm back in there and I come up with like the most ridiculous idea, like on the spot I can think of. And I go, it's not going to kill me. No one's shooting at me. Nothing's blown up. I've been through worse. And so let's get it on. And no shit, I won it. I won like $3,000 from Microsoft and won the whole thing.
What did you pitch?
Stupid. And see, this is one of those things like I would never. This is again, I'm old. This is a long ass time ago. It was basically
mobile phone.
Almost. It was a. So this is God. I'm old. I used to carry extra batteries for my phone because it ran out of battery life. I could just pop in a new battery. And kids these days listening, your phone used to have a removable battery. I know it doesn't anymore. And so my whole thing was just, was thinking about, that pain point. And it was basically, I called it solar shades. And it was shades for your car. It was actually a solar panel, and it had a little, cable out to charge a battery. So while you parked your car, you could charge your batteries up in your car. I think this actually exists now, but back then it didn't. And so,
well, and you're from Texas, so that works.
Exactly, there's always something. Yep. And for a brief moment in time, Austin kind of fancied itself to be like a clean tech city, and so I kind of had clean tech on the mind, and there was a bunch of studies that people did. So I pitched this idea of solar shades, and really what I think helped it, and this is actually important for entrepreneurs to understand. It was just. It was very easy to pitch. It was something that, everybody has a car, everybody parked in the sun. A lot of people in Texas had shades to protect their dashboard. And so it was something I knew I could pitch in 30 seconds or less. And it was a pain point that I knew people had. And so it was relatable. If somebody else is selling, quantum fusion, it's like, you're not going to be able to pitch that in 30 seconds in a really crowded room. And so, knowing your audience, and knowing your time and what is the most likely attention you will get is critical to being able to pitch well. And so you have to be able to get across. Yeah. You have to be able to get across and make it relatable.
Yeah. I mean, that pain point is critical. Mm-hmm. So many people are like, oh, this would be a good idea. Okay, well, does anybody need that? Does anybody know that they need that? Oh,
100%. And I will say, one of my, I hate it that, now he's such an idiot for slapping Chris Rock, but Will Smith actually has a lot of really great quotes. He's got a lot of great motivational content. He's got a lot of great lessons learned. And one of his, I think he was talking to, it was a group of skydivers, but it was basically, God put some of the greatest things in your life on the other side of terror. And it's so true. And I was terrified and I didn't want to go back in there, and I didn't have to. No one would have cared if I was there or not. It wasn't relevant. Right. But I was so afraid. I knew that's what I had to do because I was afraid, because it mattered. And so I think people need to look for those moments of terror and understand that that's, where all the growth comes from. That's where all the opportunities come from. It is that palms sweaty, ready to go. I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it anyways. And man, the euphoria after at least just trying, even if you fail, it's unmatched.
I love that. Randall, it has been such an honor I love the story. I'm going to have you on again.
I love it. I'm going to hold you to it.
There has to be a repeat of, Batman had how many sequels?
That's right. Hey, and how many actors? Look, I might change the story the next time we talk. Be like, look, it's Batman. It's Val Kilmer's Batman this time.
Yeah, exactly. We'll call you Randall.
Yes, exactly. A nice little tilde over a name, change the whole vibe. I like it.
There it is. And then we'll pretend that you were in the Air Force.
That would be an honor, sir. I know we talked about this in the past. Any kids listening that haven't, thinking about the armed forces, the Air Force is probably where you should start. They treat their people better. Rob is 100% right. And if you get a chance to fly, man, nothing like it.
It's a great day.
In the world.
It's a great day.
And I will tell you what, there is nothing better than hearing you have fixed wing support on station when you are on the ground getting shot at. Man, an AC-130 Spectre gunship is the most awesome piece of equipment ever to be created by man in a conventional setting. It will change a battlefield within seconds.
And the people who have never seen those, seen an airplane and that thing shows up.
It's incredible. It's just incredible. But anyways, I thank you for your service, Rob, and I thank you for putting together this podcast. And I'm going to hold you to it. And I don't even care if we record it. I want to get to know you better. I want to talk to you. If I can ever do anything for you, please let me know. And I hope this is the start of a beautiful friendship.
I love it. Well, you're not done yet because I always end the same way. I have 3 different questions for you here.
Uh-oh.
So the first question is, if you could go back to your 18-year-old self, what is one piece of advice that you tell yourself?
Ooh. You know what?
Besides carry a quarter.
You're right. I would say, don't disclaim yourself. I've talked about this a lot. People that have listened to me, when I joined Kaufman Fellows, I felt very much out of water. This is a group of people who are Nobel Prize runner-ups. There was an Olympian. There was a VP, third highest person at Oracle. Journalists. People with just crazy backgrounds. One of the guys in my class I was really close with ran all of digital media for BBC and then now at Nike. And I remember when we were first met, it's a 2-year fellowship in Silicon Valley. When we first met, there was 15 of us. I was class 15. And they were going around introducing everybody. And I'm just thinking my God, who are these people? I cannot follow this. And I was still kind of nervous. It finally got to me. I was it's 13 people deep. I'm and I joking. And I did this out of insecurity, but I said, hi, I'm Randall. And the CEO at the time, a gentleman named Phil Wickham, he was responsible for a lot of, moving that program forward. I go, hey, I'm Phil's charity case. They just let me in because they needed a token military guy to make themselves feel better. Man, he was pissed. He was like, listen, 1, don't ever disclaim yourself. 2, every time you do that, it's an insult not only to yourself, but to everyone who's ever believed in you. And that it was a huge wake-up call. And it was like, if you go back to your 18-year-old self, don't try to disarm people through like feigned humility. Don't disarm people with insecurity. Don't disarm people by, joking about why you shouldn't be there. You're there. You deserve to be there because you're there. And so lead with your best self and always give yourself the credit that you deserve.
Wow. Can you go back to my 18-year-old self too?
We'll tell each other, look, our 18-year-old selves wouldn't listen to us even if we told them. And my 18-year-old self would be like, who are you, old man? Get away from me.
Well, yeah, it's like it's Back to the Future. Not a lot of kids have seen it, but yeah.
Exactly.
Stop talking to me, old man.
Love it.
All right, here's the second one. A lot of people are going through challenges or have gone through challenges and struggles, and what would be 2 pieces of or 2 habits that you would say that they should incorporate every single day to start moving forward or to continue moving forward in their life?
Oh, man, I can't steal from Admiral McRaven and tell you to make your bed because he has a great speech on that. So I won't.
I know. One. I still don't make my bed.
I know, right? I know.
It's always
great
hard. Quote,
it's discipline, right? Now you have regret. You don't have discipline. It is. I've already said one of them, and it really is romanticizing the little things because life does move fast on you, and sometimes it's over, sooner than we'd appreciate. And you've seen when you've lost buddies, whether it's in combat or accidents or through sickness, you realize that that therein lies that regret. Like, did I do everything I wanted to do? Did I? My dad passed away in March of 2020, and the last thing I ever said to him was, "I love you." And I didn't know he was going to pass away, but I was so glad that the last thing I ever said to him was, "I love you." It wasn't a fight. It wasn't some snide little comment. It wasn't a joke. And so when I try to remember that a lot, it's romanticizing those little things, those little moments, because it's the little moments that ultimately hold a lot of gravity in our hearts. And, I would tell people, when they're going through something, you got to break down the problem and you got to just, take one step and then another and another and another. And you hear people use the analogy of building a wall or eating an elephant. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you lay a wall? One brick at a time. Lay the best brick you can and then lay another brick and another brick. And so I think people get overwhelmed by, how much they have to do. And so you just got to break down the problem. You got to get a to-do list out. You got to write it down. And once you start accomplishing tasks, it'll give you, that motivation to accomplish some more. And once you have control and you start to have those small wins, that'll really kind of feed upon itself. And so I always encourage people to, really appreciate the small things, the small moments, and then come up with a plan and then organize that plan around a lot of small tactics that will lead you towards a greater strategy.
I love that. And here's the last one. This one's going to be fun because I have no idea who you're going to pick. So if you could have coffee with 3 people that could be deceased or alive at a firehouse table. So in other words, nothing's off the table. You can ask anything and it's going to be answered. Who would they be and why?
Gosh, that's a good one. And living or dead?
Living or dead, yeah.
Jesus, because I got to get to the bottom of this.
There you go.
Probably, and I'm going to say it again. Remember, I say things that are just totally outlandish. I'm sure at some point I'll get canceled, but I'm not famous enough to ever get canceled, so I don't think I have to worry about it. But I'm going to say Hitler. There is a small aside till I get to my third while I think of it. There is a book called Conversations with God that my mom sent me while I was in Iraq. And when you're getting shot at, you kind of think, existential thoughts. This book this guy doesn't really think he was, talking to God, but he was kind of inspired to write this book when he was going to commit suicide. And he ended up writing this book about all the questions that everybody wants to ask. Like, if God exists, why are kids born with cancer? Why do some people who just seem like really shitty people end up becoming, millionaires and billionaires, and people who are really great people seem to struggle? Like, I don't get it. What's what's the plan here? It doesn't make sense to me. And so he goes through this book, and he really, he actually talks about, Hitler a lot. And, he's a terrible human being. He's by all accounts, like one of the worst human beings to ever walk the planet. But Hitler probably did not wake up every day thinking he was. And like that kind of like psyche, like I'm fascinated by human psyche, like what motivates people, why people do what they do. Your wife doesn't roll out of bed and go, I'm going to really piss off my husband today. They're just living the best life they can, and they're doing what they think is right. And then, the world will judge them, or your husband will judge you. And so, I don't want to just meet people who are my role models. I want to meet people who I don't fucking understand. Like, what were you thinking? Like, and then, oh, by the way, how did this entire country let you do it? Because the world needs to pay attention to that. The human psyche that turned normal people complicit. Because everyone saw what was going on, but people started saying, well, you know what? I don't want to say anything because I don't want that to happen to me and my family. And all of a sudden, you ended up killing millions of people with the help of a lot of normal people who didn't agree with it. That whole thing I'm a student of history, and I just want to know more, and I want to understand more. Then the third, it sounds stupid, but the third's just going to be my dad. Like, he's passed now, but I always just enjoyed talking to him. And I would love for him to be a part of that, because I would want to know like what lessons learned kind of came from him, what he thought about that. And I say that because I would encourage people to spend more time
different generations
talking. Like, think about that question in general. It's like, who would you put around a table? And we immediately think, these crazy thought leaders or figureheads. And more often than not, right around you, go down to the local veterans center, go to VFW, go to, you spend so much time with your charity and hospitals. There's some really incredible people that if you sat down and just opened your heart and talked to them, you would learn so much. And so there's so many stories that, I think people can share and tell. And, part of these kind of firehouse chat, situations are for others as well. So I'd love for him to be a part of that. I mean, probably maybe a lot of that's just because I miss him. But, that's who, I immediately think of Jesus and Hitler. And then I just kind of think back to my dad, and I'd love to just sit down with those two and chop it up.
That would be like a 10 pot of coffee a conversation,
or a lot of scotch or a lot of whiskey.
Oh, I know. You'd have to have some other. You can't have just creamer.
And you know what? And I'll leave you with this because I've already talked about enough controversial shit. Like, part of me, I grew up in a Catholic private school. Again, I just got married in an Orthodox ceremony. I am very, spiritual. I believe that religion is man-made to better understand the world around us. I don't believe that one religion is better than another. I do believe in kind of acceptance and tolerance. And like, part of me kind of wants to, meet Jesus because I want him to, if there is an afterlife or there is something more, it might just be energy and the universe, and that could be godly in and of itself. But I would love if, there is a way to capture that energy into a person. I'd love for somebody to just tell me, I fucking told you. I told you. Everybody is going, the religions, you're not, I want everybody that's ever like killed somebody in the name of their particular God to be like, no, you're fucking wrong. Like, that's stupid. Like, what are you doing? Like, why would I ever think that? Why would I ever lead through retribution and hell and damnation? Like, that's human characteristics. Like, y'all are all stupid. And so I want somebody to tell me that, like, my hypothesis is right. That, from Native Americans to Buddhists to Islam to Christianity, we're all talking to the same thing. And that could be a person, it could be an alien race, or it could just be the awesomeness of energy and science and whatever gave birth to this crazy world we're in. But fuck, just preach acceptance. Like, you're not right. I'm not wrong. You're not better. I'm not worse. You don't need to be right to be fulfilled.
That I couldn't have scripted a better way to end this.
Man, you got me talking about stuff I never talk about.
I love it. I love it. You know what? I want to make sure to people go to randallcrowder.com or go to Funware. It's PHUNWARE.com. Make sure you go there. So many things to talk about still, and definitely going to have you on again. But thanks so much for joining me today.
Can't wait. Thank you, Rob. I really appreciate it. Keep doing what you're doing. If I can ever be helpful, thank you. And I appreciate everybody else for listening.
Thanks for listening and supporting the Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Remember, don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast, and please share this episode with a friend or family. To find out more about Fireman Rob or reach out about a question, go to www.firemanrob.com. Until next time, live your life forged in the fires.